When my son told me I was too old to handle Thanksgiving dinner, I smiled and quietly walked away. But what I discovered in the following days, and what I did about it, left my entire family speechless. I'm so glad you're here to hear my story. Please follow along until the very end, and comment which state you're watching from so I can see how far this reaches. At 70 years old, I never imagined I'd be told I was incompetent to do the one thing I'd mastered over nearly 5 decades. My name is Beatrice Calloway, though most people call me Bea, and I've been the heart of my family's Thanksgiving celebration since 1976, the year I married my late husband Theodore and we moved into our charming craftsman home on Maple Ridge Avenue in the small town of Willowbrook, just outside of Portland. For 47 years, that third Thursday in November had been sacred ground in our family. My dining room, with its built-in china cabinet and the long oak table that Theodore had refinished by hand, had witnessed countless precious memories. I could still see my children as toddlers, their chubby fingers reaching for warm dinner rolls before grace had been said. I remembered them as awkward teenagers, rolling their eyes at their great-uncle's repeated stories about the war. And more recently, I'd watched my grandchildren experience their first tastes of my famous pumpkin pie, their faces lighting up with delight. The worn spots on my kitchen's hardwood floor told their own story, decades of standing at the counter, rolling out pie dough, basting turkeys, stirring gravy, and assembling the dishes that had become legendary in our family. There was a particular spot near the stove where the finish had completely worn away, polished smooth by my feet over thousands of meals. Theodore used to joke that we should frame that spot when we finally redid the floors, as a testament to all the love that had been cooked into our family gatherings. This year should have been no different from any other. It was late October, the leaves outside my kitchen window had turned brilliant shades of amber and crimson, and I was already deep into my Thanksgiving preparations. My recipe cards, some typed on my old typewriter from the 70s, others handwritten in fading ink, many stained with butter and flour and memories, were spread across my kitchen table as I planned the menu. There would be my traditional sage and onion stuffing, the one that used the sourdough bread from Henrikson's bakery down on Main Street. Theodore's favorite sweet potato casserole, topped with pecans and a touch of bourbon, which I still made every year in his memory even though he'd been gone for 3 years now. The green bean almondine that even my pickiest eaters loved. My famous Parker House rolls that my grandchildren fought over. And of course, the crowning glory, my perfectly roasted turkey with pan gravy so rich and flavorful that people had been known to drink it from their cups. I was sitting at my kitchen table with my detailed shopping list, mentally calculating cooking times and oven temperatures, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed my son's name, Jonathan Calloway. Jonathan is 43 now, my eldest child, and works as a regional sales director for a large pharmaceutical company based in Seattle. He'd always been ambitious, driven, successful in the traditional sense. After his divorce from his first wife Rebecca 5 years ago, he'd thrown himself into his work and his social life. About 9 months ago, he'd started dating a woman named Sienna Blackwood, someone he'd met at a corporate networking event. I'd met Sienna exactly 3 times. She was 34, worked in luxury real estate, and dressed like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Everything about her was polished, calculated, and just a bit too perfect. She had opinions about everything and wasn't shy about sharing them, often in ways that felt more like judgments than observations. "Hey Mom," Jonathan's voice came through the phone, and I immediately detected a certain hesitation that a mother knows instinctively. It was the same tone he'd used as a teenager when he was about to ask for something he knew I wouldn't like. "Hello, sweetheart. I was just working on the Thanksgiving menu. I was thinking of trying a new cranberry relish this year, fresh cranberries with orange zest and just a hint of, actually, Mom, that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about." He cleared his throat, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood. "About Thanksgiving." I felt my pen pause mid-word on my shopping list. Something in his tone made my maternal instincts prickle with warning. "Oh. What about it, dear?" "Well, Sienna and I have been discussing the holiday, and we think it's time for some changes in how we do things." "Changes?" I repeated carefully. "What sort of changes, Jonathan?" Sienna's really passionate about hosting and entertaining. She's taken these intensive cooking courses at Le Cordon Bleu, the fancy culinary school. And she's been dying to put on a proper dinner party. She thinks Thanksgiving would be the perfect opportunity to showcase her skills and do something really special for the family. I felt a flutter of unease begin in my stomach, but I pushed it aside, trying to be understanding. That's lovely, sweetheart. She's certainly welcome to bring a dish or two to contribute. I always appreciate the help, and it would be nice to try something new alongside our traditional, "No, Mom." His voice became firmer, taking on the authoritative tone he probably used in boardroom meetings. You're not understanding. We want to host the entire Thanksgiving dinner. At our place. Sienna wants to do the whole thing from scratch, her way. The words seemed to echo in my quiet kitchen. For a moment, I couldn't quite process what he was saying. Host the entire dinner? At their place? After 47 years of tradition? Oh, I managed to say, my voice smaller than I'd intended. That's quite ambitious for her first Thanksgiving with the family. Are you sure she understands how much work is involved? Cooking for 18 people she can handle it, Mom. She's not some amateur. She's studied under professional chefs. And honestly. He paused, and in that pause, I heard something that made my heart sink. Honestly, Sienna thinks, and I have to say I agree with her, that maybe you're getting a little too old to handle such a massive undertaking. Too old. Those two words hung in the air like a death sentence. At 70, I was apparently too feeble, too incompetent, too worn out to do what I'd done excellently for nearly half a century. Jonathan, I've never had any trouble managing Thanksgiving dinner, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I have a system. Everything runs smoothly. Last year went perfectly. Did it, though? He interrupted. Mom, be honest. You looked exhausted afterward. I saw you practically collapse into your chair after dessert. And Sienna mentioned that your hands were shaking when you were carving the turkey. I was tired because I'd been up since 5 in the morning preparing a feast for 18 people, I said, hearing the defensive edge creeping into my voice. And my hands weren't shaking, the knife was dull and I was applying pressure to cut through. Mom, listen to yourself. You're making excuses. The truth is, you're 70 years old. All that standing, the heavy lifting, carrying hot dishes, managing multiple timers, keeping track of everything, it's too much for someone your age. We're worried about you. What if you fell? What if you burned yourself? What if the stress caused a heart attack or a stroke? Each word felt like a small dagger. My son, my own son, whom I'd raised, nurtured, and loved, was treating me like I was senile and infirm. I'm 70, Jonathan, not 90, I said, my voice tight. I walk 3 miles every morning. I do yoga twice a week. My last physical showed that I'm in excellent health for my age. Dr. Morrison said I have the blood pressure of someone 20 years younger. It's not just about your health, Mom. It's about your kitchen too. His words came faster now, as if he'd rehearsed this speech. Let's be real, your kitchen isn't exactly modern. When was the last time you updated anything? The appliances are from the 90s. Sienna has a professional 6-burner gas range, a convection oven, a warming drawer, and a sous vide machine. She has granite countertops and a kitchen island with prep space. Your kitchen is, well, it's dated. It's not equipped for the kind of meal Sienna wants to prepare. I looked around my kitchen, the kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals. The same vintage O'Keefe and Merritt stove where I'd taught Jonathan to make scrambled eggs when he was 8 years old. The butcher block counters that bore the marks of countless knives and bore witness to 3 generations learning to cook. The deep farmhouse sink where Theodore used to help me wash dishes while we talked about our days. Yes, it wasn't a showroom. Yes, the appliances weren't the latest models. But it was mine, and it had produced more perfect meals than I could count. My kitchen has served this family beautifully for decades, I said quietly. Mom, don't take this personally. This isn't about you. It's about giving the family a new experience. Sienna's already planning an amazing menu, a heritage turkey prepared sous vide for perfect moisture retention, a deconstructed stuffing with artisanal brioche, butternut squash velouté with brown butter sage foam, Brussels sprouts with pomegranate molasses and candied walnuts, truffle mac and cheese, and for dessert, she's making individual pumpkin panna cottas with ginger snap crumble and maple bourbon caramel. I sat in stunned silence. Butternut squash velouté? Brown butter sage foam? Individual panna cottas? These weren't Thanksgiving dishes, they were pretentious restaurant food. That sounds very elaborate, I said carefully. But Jonathan, what about our traditional dishes? What about the stuffing recipe that's been in our family for 3 generations? What about Theodore's sweet potato casserole? What about, Mom, that's exactly the point. Those recipes are old. They're dated. They're heavy and traditional and frankly, not very sophisticated. Sienna wants to bring Thanksgiving into the modern era. She wants to elevate it beyond the same boring dishes everyone makes. She wants to create a dining experience that people will remember. Every word felt like a dismissal of my entire life's work. Every dish I'd perfected, every tradition I'd maintained, every memory I'd created around that dining room table, all of it was being called boring, dated, unsophisticated. And what does the rest of the family think about this? I asked, my throat tight. Have you talked to Violet? To Aunt Constance? To your cousins? Violet was my daughter, 40 years old, a high school English teacher with 3 children of her own. She'd always been the more traditional of my 2 children, the one who still called me every Sunday, who asked for my recipes, who valued family history. I'm sending out a group text today to let everyone know about the change, Jonathan said. They'll adjust. Change is healthy, Mom. People get stuck in ruts, doing the same thing year after year just because that's how it's always been done. This is an opportunity for growth, for new memories, for evolution. Evolution. As if 47 years of love and tradition were primitive conditions that needed to be overcome. And everyone's expected to just accept this? I asked. To abandon our traditions without discussion? Mom, you're being dramatic. It's just a dinner. It's not like we're canceling Thanksgiving altogether, we're just doing it differently. And honestly, you should be relieved. Think about it, no stress, no cooking, no cleanup. You can actually relax and enjoy the day for once. Isn't that what you've always said you wanted? To not have to work so hard on holidays? Had I said that? Maybe once or twice, in passing, after particularly exhausting days. But I'd never meant it. The work was part of the joy. The cooking was how I showed my love. The exhaustion at the end of the day came with the satisfaction of seeing my family happy and fed. When were you planning to inform everyone about this decision you and Sienna have made? I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Like I said, I'm sending a text this afternoon. New location, new menu, new traditions. It'll be great, Mom. You'll see. Once you taste Sienna's cooking, you'll understand why this is for the best. After we hung up, I sat motionless in my kitchen as the afternoon light shifted across the worn floorboards. The silence felt heavy, oppressive. I stared at my half-finished shopping list, at the recipe card spread across the table, at the apron hanging on its hook near the pantry, the one embroidered with "World's Best Cook" that Violet had given me for Mother's Day 17 years ago. Too old. The words kept echoing in my mind, each repetition feeling like another year being added to my age, another diminishment of my worth, another step toward obsolescence. My phone buzzed, making me jump. It was a text from Violet. Mom, did Jonathan call you? I just got the strangest message. Call me immediately. I called her back with trembling fingers. Mom. Violet's voice was sharp with indignation. Please tell me you're not going along with this insanity. Jonathan just sent this completely absurd text about how Little Miss Perfect is taking over Thanksgiving and serving deconstructed food. What does that even mean? How do you deconstruct stuffing? It's already torn up bread. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Violet had never warmed to Sienna, though she'd been too polite to say much about it directly. But I could hear years of restrained opinion finally breaking free. It means your brother thinks I'm too old to cook anymore, I said, my voice cracking despite my efforts to sound steady. He said what? Violet's fury came through the phone like heat. Mom, he did not actually say that to you. His exact words were that I'm getting too old to handle such a massive undertaking. That my kitchen isn't modern enough. That my recipes are dated and unsophisticated. I'm going to kill him, Violet said flatly. I'm going to actually murder my own brother. Mom, your Thanksgiving dinners are legendary. Do you know how many of my friends have begged for invitations over the years? Do you remember when Jason's entire college fraternity tried to crash our Thanksgiving because he wouldn't stop talking about your food? This is insane. He's seriously going to let this woman he barely knows erase 47 years of family tradition? Apparently so, I said softly. Over my dead body, Violet declared. What did you tell him? I looked around my kitchen again, at the recipe cards, at the worn floor, at the old stove that had never failed me, at the photographs held to my refrigerator with magnets, Jonathan's gap-toothed grin at his 8th birthday party in this very kitchen. Violet in her prom dress, posing by the breakfast nook. Theodore's arms around my waist as we posed with our first turkey as newlyweds, both of us so young and full of hope. What had I said to Jonathan? The truth was, I'd barely protested. I'd let him steamroll over me because some part of me, the part that had been conditioned to be accommodating, to not make waves, to accept gracefully what couldn't be changed, had simply folded. I didn't say much of anything, I admitted, feeling ashamed. Mom. Violet's voice softened but remained firm. You're not seriously going to let them do this, are you? You're not going to just hand over our family's Thanksgiving to some social climbing woman who wants to serve foam and panna cotta? Was I? The old Beatrice, the one who had raised 2 children largely alone while Theodore worked 60-hour weeks to build his accounting practice, who had gone back to school at 40 to get her teaching degree, who had nursed her husband through his final illness with grace and strength, she wouldn't have accepted this so meekly. But somewhere in these last few years, I'd started making myself smaller. Started accepting less than I deserved because I didn't want to be seen as difficult, didn't want to be the bitter old woman clinging to the past, didn't want to be a burden to my busy adult children. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, I told Violet honestly. But I need some time to think. Well, don't think too long, Violet said. Because I guarantee you the family group chat is about to explode. She was right. Within minutes of hanging up with Violet, my phone began buzzing continuously with notifications. Jonathan had sent his announcement to the family text thread. Family announcement, this year Sienna and I will be hosting Thanksgiving at our condo. New location, new menu, exciting changes ahead. Sienna has been studying advanced culinary techniques and is planning an incredible elevated dining experience. We're really excited to bring some modern sophistication to our holiday celebration. Thursday, November 23rd, 5 p.m. Our address, The Pinnacle Residences, 2847 Riverside Boulevard, Unit 1504. Please RSVP by November 10th so we can plan accordingly. See you there. The responses came almost immediately, and they were not what Jonathan had anticipated. Violet, excuse me? What happened to Mom's house? We've celebrated Thanksgiving at Maple Ridge Avenue for literally my entire life. This is ridiculous. My sister Constance, Jonathan, your mother has been hosting this family for close to 50 years. This seems extremely sudden and honestly quite disrespectful. My nephew Marcus, dude, no offense, but your girlfriend's cooking can't possibly compete with Grandma Bea's. Her turkey is literally the best thing I eat all year. My niece Delilah, what about Grandma's stuffing? And her rolls? Are we seriously abandoning all our traditions? My brother-in-law Raymond, Beatrice, what's going on? Did you agree to this? Jonathan's response came quickly, and I could practically hear his defensive tone even through text. Everyone needs to calm down. This is a positive change. You're all being resistant just because it's different. Mom is getting older and needs a break from all that work. Trust me, once you experience Sienna's cooking, you'll understand why this is an upgrade. And for those worried about traditions, traditions evolve. That's called progress. Violet's response was instantaneous. Don't you dare use Mom's age as an excuse for your girlfriend's ego trip. Mom is in better shape than half the people in this family. This isn't about helping her, this is about Sienna wanting to play hostess and you're letting her push your own mother aside to do it. The argument continued to escalate. Aunt Constance weighed in again, pointing out that no one had even consulted the family about such a major change. Marcus started a separate poll asking who actually wanted to abandon the traditional dinner. My cousin Fiona mentioned that her kids would be devastated without Grandma Bea's special rolls. Jonathan's messages became increasingly frustrated. I can't believe how closed-minded everyone is being. You're all acting like I'm committing some kind of crime. Sienna is putting in a lot of effort for this. The least you could do is show some gratitude and open-mindedness. It was Violet who finally said what everyone was thinking. Jonathan, be honest. Did Sienna want to host Thanksgiving, or did she want to replace Mom? Because from where I'm sitting, this looks less like a generous offer and more like a power play. My phone rang immediately. It was my sister Constance. Beatrice Marie Calloway, she said in the same tone she'd used when we were children and I'd done something particularly foolish. Please tell me you're not going to let this stand. Constance was 2 years younger than me, a retired attorney who had never suffered fools gladly. She'd been widowed young and had raised her 3 children with a fierce independence that I'd always admired. What am I supposed to do, Connie? I asked, using her childhood nickname. He's my son. Sienna is his girlfriend. If I fight this, I'm the difficult mother-in-law making trouble for their relationship. First of all, she's not even your daughter-in-law yet, thank God. Second, if you don't fight this, you're setting a precedent that it's acceptable to push you aside and dismiss your contributions to this family. Is that really what you want? Of course not, but, no buts, Beatrice. I've seen this pattern before, in my practice, in my own family. One person starts pushing boundaries, testing to see how much they can get away with. If you let this go, what comes next? Next year she'll have opinions about Christmas? About birthdays? About how you spend your time and money? Her words struck a chord. Wasn't that exactly what this was, a test to see if I could be pushed aside? I just don't understand why Jonathan is going along with this, I said quietly. He used to love our Thanksgivings. He used to bring his friends home from college just so they could experience it. What happened to that boy? That boy fell under the influence of a manipulative woman who sees everything as a competition, Constance said bluntly. I met Sienna once, remember? At your birthday party last spring? I knew within 5 minutes what she was. She's a social climber, B. Everything is about appearances, status, being seen as superior. She doesn't want to host Thanksgiving, she wants to prove she's better than you. The words hurt because they rang true. I remembered that birthday party. Sienna had arrived dressed like she was attending a gallery opening rather than a casual family gathering. She'd made several comments about the quaint decorations and home-style food, always with a slight smile that suggested she was being kind by not pointing out how unsophisticated everything was. So what do I do? I asked Constance. That depends. How angry are you? I considered the question. How angry was I? Beneath the hurt and disappointment, beneath the insecurity and self-doubt, there was indeed anger. Anger at being dismissed. Anger at having my life's work called dated and boring. Anger at being pushed aside by a woman who'd been in our lives for less than a year. Anger at my own son for allowing it to happen. I'm furious, I admitted. Good, Constance said with satisfaction. Fury is useful. Now, here's what I think you should do. As my sister outlined her idea, I felt something shift inside me. That smaller, accommodating version of myself that had been accepting disrespect to keep the peace, she was stepping aside. And in her place, the real Beatrice Calloway was emerging. The woman who had survived loss and hardship. The woman who had built a beautiful life from nothing. The woman who deserved respect, not dismissal. By the time I hung up with Constance, I knew exactly what I was going to do. And it was going to shock everyone. The morning after my conversation with Constance, I woke up at 5:30, as I had every morning for the past 40 years. But instead of my usual walk through Willowbrook's tree-lined streets, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of strong coffee and made a list. Not a shopping list this time. A strategy list. Constance's advice had been simple but powerful: don't react emotionally. Don't make this about hurt feelings or mother-son drama. Make it about facts. If Sienna wants to position herself as the superior hostess, let her prove it. But more importantly, find out who she really is. Nobody becomes this territorial and aggressive without a reason. My sister had always been the strategic thinker in our family. Where I led with my heart, she led with her head. And right now, I needed that clear-headed approach. I pulled out my laptop. Yes, I had one, despite my son's apparent belief that I was technologically incompetent, and opened a fresh document. At the top, I typed, Project Thanksgiving, what I know versus what I need to know. Under what I know, I began listing facts. Sienna Blackwood, 34 years old, works in luxury real estate, met Jonathan at a corporate networking event 9 months ago, took culinary courses at Le Cordon Bleu, according to Jonathan. Extremely image-conscious, lives in the Pinnacle residences, expensive downtown condo building, drives a white Mercedes SUV, always dressed in designer clothing, made several dismissive comments about my home and cooking at my birthday party. Under what I need to know, I wrote, where did she grow up? What's her family situation? Has she really taken culinary courses, or is that exaggeration? What's her employment history? Has she been married before? Other serious relationships? Why is she so eager to replace me as family hostess? Financial situation, is she really as successful as she appears? I stared at the list, feeling slightly guilty. Was I being paranoid? Was I just a bitter older woman who couldn't accept that her son had found someone new? But then I remembered the look in Sienna's eyes at my birthday party, the way she'd surveyed my home like a real estate agent calculating renovation costs, the way she'd barely concealed her disdain for my dated decor, the slight smirk when she'd suggested that Jonathan could do so much better than his starter home apartment. No, this wasn't paranoia. This was maternal instinct combined with 70 years of learning to read people. My phone buzzed with a text from Violet. Mom, are you okay? I barely slept last night thinking about Jonathan's announcement. Have you decided what you're going to do? I typed back, I'm fine, sweetheart. And yes, I've decided. But I need to do some research first. Can you help me with something? Her response was immediate, anything. What do you need? Does your friend Amanda still work in real estate? The one who was in your book club? Yes, she's with Riverside Realty Group. Why? I want to know more about Sienna's professional background. Specifically, I want to know if she's as successful as she claims to be. There was a pause before Violet's next message. Mom, are you investigating her? Let's call it, getting to know my potential future daughter-in-law better. Can Amanda help or not? She can definitely help. Give me an hour. While I waited, I decided to do some preliminary research of my own. I'd learned over the years that people revealed a lot about themselves on social media, often more than they realized. I found Sienna's Instagram account easily. It was public, probably because she used it for business purposes. Her handle was at @Sienna_Blackwood_luxury, and her bio read, luxury real estate specialist, design enthusiast, living my best life, Portland, Oregon. Rose sparkles. I scrolled through her feed, and with each image, a clearer picture emerged. Every photo was meticulously curated. Sienna in designer outfits at upscale restaurants, Sienna posing in front of multi-million-dollar homes, presumably properties she was selling, Sienna at charity galas and networking events, always with a glass of champagne and a practiced smile. What struck me most was how performative it all seemed. Every caption was carefully crafted to project success, sophistication, and status. There were no casual photos, no glimpses of real life, no moments of genuine emotion. Everything was a presentation, a carefully constructed image of perfection. I clicked on her tagged photos and found several featuring Jonathan. They'd been dating for 9 months, but the first photo of them together was only from 6 months ago, a carefully staged shot at a waterfront restaurant, both of them looking like they'd stepped out of a catalog. The comments on these couple photos were interesting. Power couple. Fire, you two are goals. Finally found someone on your level, Sienna. But there were also some comments that gave me pause. Another one? How long will this last? Face with tears of joy, this comment had been deleted, but I could still see it in my browser cache. Does this one know about the others? Also deleted, I made note of the usernames who had left these comments and clicked through to their profiles. One belonged to a woman named Charlene Wu, whose profile indicated she also worked in real estate. Her photos showed her at various industry events, and in several of them, Sienna was visible in the background. A colleague, perhaps? Or a former friend? I was contemplating whether it would be too forward to message this Charlene directly when my phone rang. It was Violet. Okay, I talked to Amanda, Violet said without preamble. And Mom, you're going to want to sit down for this. I'm already sitting, I said, my heart rate picking up. What did she find out? First, the good news, Sienna does work in luxury real estate, that part is true. She's with Prestige Properties Northwest, which is a high-end boutique firm. And the bad news? She's only been with them for 7 months. Before that, she was with 2 other agencies, each for less than a year. Amanda says that's a red flag in the industry. It suggests either performance issues or interpersonal problems. And get this, Amanda reached out to a friend who works at one of Sienna's previous agencies. Apparently, Sienna was let go because she was falsifying her sales numbers and trying to claim credit for other agents' deals. I felt my eyebrows rise. She was stealing credit for other people's work? Exactly. And there's more. Amanda pulled up Sienna's actual sales record. It's public information for licensed agents. Mom, she's sold exactly 3 properties in the past year. 3. That's not luxury real estate specialist numbers. That's barely making rent numbers. But she drives a Mercedes and lives in the Pinnacle, I said, confused. Those aren't cheap. Which raises the question of where the money is actually coming from, Violet said meaningfully. Mom, I don't want to make accusations, but... You think she's after Jonathan's money, I finished. I think it's a possibility we need to consider. Jonathan makes good money in pharma sales, and he got a substantial inheritance when Dad died. If Sienna isn't as successful as she pretends to be, your son would be a very attractive target. I felt sick. But Jonathan's not stupid. Surely he'd see through that kind of manipulation. Mom, love makes people stupid. Or in this case, infatuation makes people blind. Jonathan's been lonely since his divorce. He's at an age where a lot of his friends are getting remarried, having more kids, building these picture-perfect second-act lives. Along comes this beautiful, sophisticated woman who makes him feel important and successful. Of course he's going to overlook red flags. She was right, and I knew it. I'd seen the way Jonathan looked at Sienna, like she was some kind of prize he'd won, proof of his own worth and success. There's something else, Violet continued. Amanda did some more digging. Real estate people are gossips, apparently, and everybody knows everybody's business. She heard through the grapevine that Sienna was engaged twice before, both times to wealthy men, and both engagements ended badly. One guy apparently discovered she was already planning how to spend his money before they'd even set a wedding date. Oh, Jonathan, I whispered, my heart breaking for my oblivious son. I know, Mom. So what are we going to do about it? I thought about Constance's advice, facts, not emotions. I needed more than gossip and speculation. I needed concrete evidence that would make Jonathan see the truth about the woman he was dating. I need to talk to someone who knows her well, I said slowly. Someone who's seen past the image she projects. Like who? Like that woman who left the snarky comment on Sienna's Instagram. Charlene Wu. She works in real estate too, and based on her comment, she knows something about Sienna's past relationships. Mom, you can't just message some random woman on Instagram. Why not? I'm 70 years old. I'm allowed to be direct. What's the worst that can happen? She doesn't respond? Violet laughed despite the seriousness of our conversation. You know what? Do it. And let me know what she says. After we hung up, I opened Instagram again and navigated to Charlene Wu's profile. I clicked on the message button and began typing. Hello Charlene, my name is Beatrice Calloway. I'm Jonathan Calloway's mother. You may have seen him in photos with Sienna Blackwood. I noticed your comment on one of Sienna's posts, and I'm hoping you might be willing to talk to me about her. I'm concerned about my son's relationship with her, and I get the sense that you might understand why. If you're willing to speak with me, I would greatly appreciate it. You can reach me at this number. I included my phone number. Thank you for considering this request. I hit send before I could second guess myself. To my surprise, my phone rang less than 10 minutes later from an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Calloway, a woman's voice said. This is Charlene Wu. I got your message. Thank you so much for calling, I said, my heart pounding. I hope I didn't overstep by contacting you. Are you kidding? I've been waiting for someone in Jonathan's life to wake up and start asking questions about Sienna. How much do you want to know? Everything, I said firmly. Tell me everything. Charlene took a deep breath. Okay, but this might take a while. Do you have time? I have all the time in the world. And so Charlene Wu began to tell me about the real Sienna Blackwood. I've worked in Portland real estate for 12 years, Charlene began. I first met Sienna about 3 years ago when she joined the industry. Right away, she was different from most new agents. She had this hunger, you know? Not the good kind of ambition that makes you work hard and build relationships. The kind that makes you willing to step on anyone to get ahead. What do you mean? I asked, grabbing a notepad to take notes. She was always looking for shortcuts. She'd try to poach other agents' clients, claim credit for deals she had nothing to do with, exaggerate her experience and expertise. But the worst part was how she used relationships as stepping stones. She'd date wealthy men, always wealthy men, and use those connections to try to access their friends, their business associates, their networks. You mentioned previous engagements in your Instagram comment, I prompted. Oh yeah, those. The first one was to Marcus Chen, a tech entrepreneur. He was absolutely smitten with her, proposed after just 4 months of dating. But then his sister did some digging and found out that Sienna had been researching his net worth and assets before they'd even gone on their first date. Turned out she'd targeted him specifically after seeing him on a top young entrepreneurs list. When Marcus confronted her, she didn't even bother to deny it. Just said she was looking for a partner who could match her lifestyle expectations. The engagement ended immediately. I felt my stomach turn. And the second one? That was worse. His name was David Rothstein, heir to a commercial real estate fortune. Sienna met him at a charity gala and basically orchestrated their entire relationship. She researched his interests, his family, his business connections, and then presented herself as his perfect match. They got engaged, and she immediately started planning this extravagant wedding that would have cost at least $300,000. $300,000? I gasped. Oh yeah, nothing but the best for Sienna. But here's the kicker, while she was planning the wedding, she was also consulting with lawyers about prenups and marital property rights. David's mother intercepted some emails and found out that Sienna was already calculating what she'd be entitled to in a divorce. Not if they got divorced, when they got divorced. She was literally planning her exit strategy before the wedding even happened. That's sociopathic, I said, horrified. That's Sienna, Charlene said flatly. Look, I'm not trying to be cruel, but you need to understand what kind of person your son is involved with. Everything with her is transactional. Every relationship is a potential resource. Every interaction is calculated for maximum benefit to her. But surely Jonathan isn't wealthy enough to be a target for someone like that, I protested. He does well, but he's not a tech entrepreneur or a real estate heir. No, but think about what he represents, Charlene said. He's in his 40s, established in his career, owns property, probably has retirement savings and investments. He's divorced, which means he's emotionally vulnerable and eager to prove he can have a successful relationship. And, forgive me for being blunt, he has a mother who presumably has assets as well. A house, savings, maybe life insurance. In Sienna's calculus, your son is a solid medium-term investment that could potentially lead to longer-term gains. The words hit me like ice water. Was I part of the equation? Was my home, my savings, my modest nest egg part of what made Jonathan attractive to this woman? There's something else you should know, Charlene continued. About 2 months ago, I ran into Sienna at a real estate networking event. She'd had a few glasses of wine and was being less careful than usual. She was talking to another agent about her relationship with Jonathan, and I overheard her say something like, "The mother is the key. Once I establish myself as the new family matriarch, everything else falls into place. The old guard has to be replaced." She said that. I felt anger rising in my chest. She specifically mentioned replacing me? She called you the old guard, yes. She said something about how traditional families have power structures, and the key to securing your position is to displace the current female authority figure. I remember it because it was so cold and calculated. She was literally talking about your family like it was a corporate takeover. I was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Everything suddenly made sense: Sienna's eagerness to host Thanksgiving, her dismissal of my traditions and recipes, her emphasis on being modern and sophisticated, in contrast to my dated ways. This wasn't about cooking or hosting. This was about establishing dominance, about pushing me out of my own family so she could take my place. "Mrs. Calloway?" Charlene's voice pulled me back. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, though my voice was tight. "I'm just realizing that I've been played, and so has my son." "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to protect my family," I said firmly. "Charlene, would you be willing to talk to my son directly? To tell him what you've told me?" There was a pause. "Honestly? Probably not. I'm sorry, but I have to work in this industry, and Sienna is vindictive. If she found out I'd interfered in her relationship, she'd make my professional life hell. But I can give you something better." "What's that?" "Documentation." I kept screenshots of some of Sienna's more questionable social media posts before she deleted them, including one where she bragged about her engagement ring from David Rothstein and mentioned his net worth. I also have email chains from when she was falsifying sales numbers at our shared agency. And I can give you the names of her previous fiancés. If you approach them directly, they might be willing to talk. "That would be incredibly helpful," I said gratefully. "Thank you, Charlene." "Don't thank me yet. Mrs. Calloway, you need to understand something. Women like Sienna don't go down easily. If you come at her, she's going to fight back hard. She'll make you look like the jealous, controlling mother who can't let go. She'll position herself as the victim of your unreasonable hostility. She's very good at playing that game." "Then I'll just have to be better," I said quietly. After I hung up with Charlene, I spent the next several hours receiving and reviewing the documentation she sent. Screenshots of deleted Instagram posts where Sienna had posed with expensive jewelry and designer bags, tagged with hashtags like #sugarbaby and #livingmybestlife. Email chains showing how she tried to claim other agents' sales as her own. And most damningly, a series of text messages that Charlene had screenshots of from a group chat where Sienna had described her relationship strategy in disturbingly clinical terms. One message in particular stood out: "The key is to make him feel like he's chosen you, when really you've chosen him. Research everything, his interests, his weaknesses, his emotional needs. Then become exactly what he's looking for." It's not lying, it's strategic compatibility. I felt sick reading it. This was what my son thought was love, a carefully orchestrated manipulation designed to extract maximum benefit from him. My phone buzzed with a text from Constance. "Well? What did you find out?" I called her instead of texting back. "You were right. She's a con artist, and Jonathan is her mark. I filled Constance in on everything I'd learned from Charlene and the documentation I'd received. My sister listened in increasingly angry silence. That calculating little, Constance bit off whatever epithet she'd been about to use. B, we need to handle this very carefully. Jonathan's not going to want to believe this about her. He's going to be defensive and resistant. I know, I said wearily. Which is why I can't just dump all of this on him. He'll think I'm being a jealous, meddling mother who's trying to ruin his relationship. So what's your plan? I looked at the notes I'd been making, at the timeline of events I'd constructed, at the pattern of behavior that had emerged from my research. Thanksgiving, I said slowly. Everything is going to come to a head at Thanksgiving. What do you mean? Sienna wants to host Thanksgiving as a way to establish herself as the new matriarch, right? To prove she's better than me, more sophisticated, more worthy of being the center of this family? Right. So let her try, I said, a plan beginning to form in my mind. Let her host. Let her serve her fancy deconstructed food and her foam and her panna cotta. But I'm going to make sure that Thanksgiving reveals exactly who she really is. B, what are you planning? I'm going to cancel my Thanksgiving, I said firmly. Publicly and completely. I'm going to let the entire family know that I'm stepping back, that Sienna and Jonathan are in charge now, that I support their decision 100%. But you don't support it, Constance said, confused. Of course I don't. But they don't need to know that yet. Right now, Sienna thinks she's won. She thinks she's successfully pushed me out and claimed my position. I'm going to let her believe that, right up until the moment when everything falls apart. I'm not following. Think about it, Connie. Sienna's never actually hosted a family gathering. She's never cooked for more than a handful of people. She's certainly never managed the complicated logistics of Thanksgiving dinner for 18 people. She's been talking a big game about her culinary skills and her sophisticated menu, but can she actually deliver? You think she's going to fail, Constance said slowly. I think she's going to reveal herself, I corrected. Her true colors, her real personality, her inability to actually care about anyone but herself. And when she does, Jonathan and everyone else will see exactly what kind of person she is, not because I told them, but because they witnessed it themselves. That's actually brilliant, Constance said admiringly. But risky. What if she pulls it off? Then I'll deal with that, I said. But I don't think she will. Everything I've learned about Sienna tells me she's great at the performance, at the image, at looking the part. But when it comes to actual substance, to genuine effort and care, to putting other people's needs before her own? I don't think she has it in her. So you're going to give her enough rope to hang herself, Constance said. Exactly. And in the meantime, I'm going to make sure I have all the evidence I need to protect Jonathan when this falls apart. Because when Sienna's true nature is revealed and Jonathan finally sees who she really is, he's going to need his mother. And I'm going to be there for him, not to say, I told you so, but to help him heal from this. You're a better person than I am, Constance said. I'd want to rub his nose in it a little bit. Oh, don't worry, I said with a slight smile. There will be time for that later. But first, I have a Thanksgiving dinner to cancel. That evening, I sat down and composed a message to send to the family group chat. I wrote and rewrote it several times, making sure the tone was perfect, supportive, gracious, and completely convincing. Finally, I had something I was satisfied with. Dear family, I've had some time to think about Jonathan's announcement regarding Thanksgiving, and I want to share my thoughts with all of you. After 47 years of hosting our family's Thanksgiving celebration, I've decided that it's time for me to step back and let the next generation take over. Jonathan and Sienna have graciously offered to host this year, and I think it's wonderful that they want to start their own traditions. Change can be difficult, but it's also necessary and healthy. I'm excited to see what Sienna creates, and I'm looking forward to simply being a guest for once rather than the hostess. I know some of you have expressed concerns about abandoning our traditional menu, but I encourage you to approach this with open minds and open hearts. New traditions have to start somewhere, and this is Sienna's chance to show us what she can do. Please give her and Jonathan your full support. As for me, I'll be there with bells on, ready to enjoy whatever culinary delights Sienna has prepared. I have complete faith in her abilities and I'm sure the day will be memorable for all of us. With love, Beatrice. I read it over one more time, making sure every word conveyed exactly what I wanted it to. On the surface, complete support and graciousness, but with just enough subtext that anyone reading carefully might detect a hint of something else. I hit send and then sat back to watch the responses come in. The first was from Jonathan, and I could practically feel his relief through the screen. Thanks, Mom. This means a lot. I knew you'd come around. See everyone? No drama necessary. Violet's response was more measured. If you're sure, Mom. We'll support whatever you decide. But it was Constance's private message to me that made me smile. Oh, you are devious. I love it. Let the games begin. Indeed, I thought. Let the games begin. Over the next few days, I continued my research and preparation. I reached out to David Rothstein, Sienna's second ex-fiancé, through his company's website. To my surprise, he agreed to speak with me over the phone. Mrs. Calloway, he said when we connected. I appreciate your caution in contacting me. I wish someone had done the same for me before I got involved with Sienna. Can you tell me about your experience with her? I asked. David's story confirmed everything Charlene had told me and added even more disturbing details. Sienna had researched not just his wealth but his family dynamics, his insecurities, his past relationships. She'd crafted her entire personality to match what she thought he wanted. The scary thing is how good she was at it, David said. For months, I really believed she was perfect for me. She liked all the same things I liked, wanted the same kind of life, shared my values. It wasn't until my mother started asking questions that the cracks began to show. What kind of questions? I asked. Simple stuff, actually. Like, what was Sienna's major in college, or where did her family celebrate Christmas growing up? Normal getting to know you questions. But Sienna's answers kept changing. One day she'd say she majored in business, the next day it was communications. One time she said her family always went skiing for Christmas, another time she said they had big traditional dinners at home. Nothing was consistent because none of it was true. She was just saying whatever she thought sounded good in the moment. So who is she really? I asked. Do you know anything about her actual background? Not much, David admitted. She was very secretive about her past. But I did learn a few things. She grew up in a small town in eastern Oregon, nothing fancy. Her parents divorced when she was young. She moved to Portland about 5 years ago with big dreams of making it in high society. And she's been trying different strategies to get there ever since, always through relationships with men who can give her the lifestyle she wants. After I hung up with David, I sat quietly for a moment, feeling an unexpected pang of sympathy for Sienna. Here was a woman so desperate to escape her modest origins, so hungry for status and wealth, that she'd turned herself into a commodity, a carefully packaged product designed to appeal to wealthy men. It was sad, really. But it didn't excuse what she was doing to my son, and it didn't change what I needed to do to protect him. My phone rang. It was Jonathan. Hey, Mom, he said, and his voice was warm in a way it hadn't been since his announcement. I just wanted to call and thank you for your message in the family chat. It really meant a lot to Sienna and me that you're supporting us on this. Of course, sweetheart, I said, keeping my voice light and supportive. I meant every word. I think it's wonderful that you two want to host. Sienna's been working so hard on the menu, he continued enthusiastically. She's been researching recipes and sourcing ingredients from specialty markets. She's really taking this seriously. I'm sure she is, I said. It's a big undertaking. She wants to prove that she can be part of this family, Jonathan said, and there was something vulnerable in his voice. I know some people have been skeptical about her. But this is her chance to show everyone who she really is. Oh, Jonathan, I thought sadly. She's definitely going to show everyone who she really is. Just not in the way you're expecting. I have complete faith, I lied smoothly. I'm sure it will be a Thanksgiving none of us will ever forget. And I meant that more than he could possibly know. The 3 weeks leading up to Thanksgiving passed in a strange blur of anticipation and preparation. While Sienna frantically planned her elevated dining experience, I quietly prepared for what I knew was coming, the inevitable unraveling of her carefully constructed facade. I kept my activities subtle. I had coffee with Aunt Constance every few days, coordinating our approach. I stayed in close contact with Violet, who was struggling to maintain her polite facade around her brother and his girlfriend. And I continued to play the role of the supportive, gracefully retiring matriarch who was thrilled to pass the torch to the next generation. It was exhausting, but necessary. Jonathan called me several times during those weeks, always with updates about Sienna's preparations. Each conversation revealed more about what was really happening behind the scenes, though my son was too infatuated to see it. Sienna's been so stressed, he told me one evening, about 10 days before Thanksgiving. She's been ordering specialty ingredients from all over the country. Did you know you can get heritage turkey shipped from a farm in Vermont? It costs a fortune, but she says it's worth it for the quality. That sounds expensive, I said carefully. Well, yeah, but we want everything to be perfect. She's also hired a professional food photographer to document the meal. She wants to post it on her Instagram. She thinks it could be good for her business, you know, showing potential clients that she has sophisticated taste and can host elegant events. Ah, there it was. This wasn't about family or tradition or even impressing us. This was about content for her social media, about maintaining the illusion of her glamorous lifestyle. And how are you feeling about all of this? I asked. Are you excited? There was a pause. Honestly, Mom, I'm a little nervous. Sienna's been really on edge lately. She snapped at me yesterday because I suggested maybe we should have at least one traditional dish on the menu, you know, for the kids. She said I was undermining her vision. Her vision, I repeated neutrally. Yeah, she's got this whole concept worked out. She wants the meal to be like a tasting menu at a high-end restaurant, with multiple small courses instead of one big spread. She says the traditional Thanksgiving is too chaotic and unsophisticated. I bit my tongue to keep from saying what I really thought. Well, it's certainly different, I managed. I just hope everyone appreciates the effort she's putting in, Jonathan said, and I could hear the worry in his voice. She keeps talking about how this is her chance to prove herself to the family. I'm sure it will be memorable, I said, echoing my earlier sentiment. What I didn't tell my son was that I'd been making my own preparations. Not for cooking or hosting, but for the aftermath. I'd printed out all the evidence Charlene had sent me. I'd organized my notes from conversations with Sienna's ex-fiancés. I documented the timeline of Sienna's relationship with Jonathan, noting how certain behaviors aligned with her past patterns. I'd also done something else. I'd called a family meeting for the day after Thanksgiving, a post-holiday brunch, at my house. I'd invited everyone, Jonathan, Sienna, Violet and her family, Constance, all the cousins, aunts, and uncles. I'd told them it was to discuss family matters and future holiday planning. What I hadn't told anyone except Constance and Violet was what I was really planning to discuss. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, Violet came over to my house with her 3 children. While the kids played in the backyard, Violet and I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd received Jonathan's devastating phone call weeks earlier. Mom, are you sure about this plan? Violet asked, her forehead creased with worry. What if it backfires? What if Jonathan blames you for whatever happens tomorrow? He might, I admitted. But Violet, I can't stand by and watch him make the biggest mistake of his life. If there's even a chance that seeing Sienna's true colors will wake him up, I have to take it. But what if the dinner goes well? What if she actually pulls it off? I smiled slightly. Sweetheart, I've been hosting Thanksgiving for 47 years. I know exactly how much work, skill, and genuine care it takes to pull off a successful family gathering. Sienna has none of those things. She has ambition, she has pretension, and she has an Instagram account. That's not enough. You sound very confident. I am confident. Not because I want her to fail, honestly, part of me wishes she could succeed, for Jonathan's sake. But I know she won't. Because Thanksgiving isn't about fancy food or sophisticated presentations. It's about love, family, and bringing people together. And Sienna doesn't understand any of those things. To her, this is just a performance, a chance to show off. And performances always crack under pressure. Violet reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're a lot tougher than people give you credit for. I'm 70 years old, honey. I've survived a lot worse than a social climbing gold digger trying to replace me. We both laughed, releasing some of the tension that had been building for weeks. Thanksgiving Day arrived with unseasonably warm weather for late November in Oregon. The sky was clear, the sun was shining, and I woke up for the first time in 47 years without a turkey to prepare. It felt wrong. My hands itched to start cooking. My mind automatically ran through the timeline I'd perfected over decades: when to put the turkey in, when to start the side dishes, when to make the gravy. But instead, I made myself a simple breakfast and got dressed in a nice outfit, a navy blue dress that Theodore had always said brought out my eyes. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because I looked different, but because I felt different. Stronger. More determined. Ready for whatever this day would bring. Violet picked me up at 4:30. The dinner was scheduled for 5 o'clock at Jonathan and Sienna's condo in the Pinnacle Residences. Are you ready for this? Violet asked as we drove through downtown Portland. As ready as I'll ever be, I said. The Pinnacle was exactly what I'd expected, all glass and steel and modern architecture, the kind of building that screamed expensive but lacked any real warmth or character. We rode the elevator to the 15th floor, and I could feel my heart pounding with each ascending number. When Jonathan opened the door to their condo, I was struck immediately by how sterile everything looked. The space was beautiful in a magazine shoot kind of way, all white furniture, abstract art, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the city. But there were no family photos, no personal touches, nothing that suggested real people actually lived here. Mom. Violet. Jonathan greeted us with hugs. Come in, come in. Sienna's in the kitchen putting the finishing touches on everything. We could hear crashes and muttered curses coming from the kitchen area. Jonathan's smile wavered slightly. It's all coming together. She's a bit of a perfectionist. The other family members began arriving. Aunt Constance came with her 3 adult children. My nephew Marcus showed up with his wife and 2 teenagers. Cousin Fiona brought her family. By 5:15, everyone had arrived except for my brother-in-law Raymond, who texted that he was running late. We all stood awkwardly in the living room, making small talk while trying to ignore the increasingly alarming sounds coming from the kitchen. At one point, we heard Sienna shout, "No, no, and no," followed by what sounded like something shattering. Jonathan kept checking his watch and glancing nervously toward the kitchen. She'll be out in a minute, he kept saying. She just wants everything perfect. At 5:30, Sienna finally emerged from the kitchen, and I had to suppress my shock at her appearance. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was disheveled. Her makeup was smudged. There was what looked like butternut squash on her expensive designer blouse. And her expression was somewhere between panic and fury. Dinner will be slightly delayed, she announced, her voice tight. Some of the courses need additional preparation time. No problem, Constance said smoothly. These things happen. Can we help with anything? No. Sienna said sharply, then seemed to catch herself. No, thank you. I have everything under control. Jonathan, can I see you in the kitchen? We all heard the urgent whispered conversation that followed, though Sienna had clearly thought she was being quiet enough that we couldn't hear. The foam deflated. The stupid foam deflated, Jonathan. Can't you just make more? It takes 45 minutes. And the sous vide turkey isn't coming up to temperature properly. The probe thermometer is showing 145 degrees when it should be at 165. So cook it longer? It's been cooking for 6 hours. It should be done by now. Maybe the thermometer is wrong? Maybe this whole thing is a disaster. There was a crash, followed by Sienna's barely suppressed sob. Violet caught my eye across the room, and I could see she was thinking the same thing I was. This is falling apart even faster than we expected. Jonathan emerged from the kitchen looking rattled. So, slight change of plans. The dinner is going to be a bit more casual than originally intended. Sienna's adapting the menu to account for some technical difficulties. We could always order pizza, Marcus's teenage son suggested helpfully. Everyone laughed, but it was uncomfortable laughter. That won't be necessary, Jonathan said stiffly. Sienna has everything under control. But as the minutes stretched into an hour, then an hour and a half, it became increasingly clear that Sienna did not, in fact, have everything under control. At 7 o'clock, nearly 2 hours past the scheduled dinner time, Sienna finally called everyone to the table. What she presented was, well, it was certainly not what she'd promised. The heritage turkey prepared sous vide was simultaneously undercooked in some places and overcooked in others, the skin rubbery and unappetizing. The deconstructed stuffing with artisanal brioche was basically burnt croutons scattered on a plate. The butternut squash velouté with brown butter sage foam was just squash soup. The foam had, as we'd heard, deflated entirely. The Brussels sprouts were undercooked and bitter. The truffle mac and cheese had separated into a greasy, curdled mess. And there wasn't nearly enough food. Sienna had apparently calculated portions based on a tasting menu concept, which meant each person got about 3 ounces of turkey and tiny portions of everything else. The kids especially looked confused and hungry. But worse than the food was Sienna's behavior. She was snapping at Jonathan, making excuses for every dish, and clearly spiraling into panic. When Aunt Constance gently suggested that the turkey might need a few more minutes in the oven, Sienna practically snarled at her. This is exactly how sous vide turkey is supposed to be. Maybe you're just not sophisticated enough to appreciate modern culinary techniques. The table fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Constance, to her credit, remained calm. I'm sure you're right, dear. I'm probably just too accustomed to traditional preparations. But the damage was done. Sienna had just insulted a respected elder family member at what was supposed to be a unifying celebration. The meal continued in awkward silence, everyone pushing the disappointing food around their plates. The kids barely ate anything. Marcus's son whispered loudly to his mother, "Can we get McDonald's on the way home?" Sienna heard and shot him a look of pure venom. Then came dessert, or what was supposed to be dessert. The individual pumpkin panna cottas with gingersnap crumble and maple bourbon caramel had failed to set properly. What Sienna brought out were essentially cups of liquid pumpkin pudding. "This is ridiculous," Fiona's husband muttered, not quite quietly enough. That was when Sienna finally snapped. "You know what? Fine." She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This family is impossible to please. I spent weeks planning this meal, thousands of dollars on ingredients, and all I get is criticism and complaints." "Sienna, honey," Jonathan started to reach for her hand, but she yanked it away. "No, Jonathan. I'm done trying to impress these people. Your mother has poisoned everyone against me from the beginning. She couldn't stand the idea of someone else taking over her precious Thanksgiving, so she's sabotaged this whole thing." All eyes turned to me. I remained calm, my hands folded in my lap. "Sienna," I said quietly, "I haven't said a single word against you all evening. You didn't have to. Your judgment has been clear from the moment we met. You think I'm not good enough for your son, not good enough for this family. Well, maybe I don't want to be part of a family that's stuck in the past, that can't appreciate anything modern or sophisticated. That's enough," Jonathan said, his voice firm in a way I rarely heard. "Sienna, you need to calm down." "Calm down? Calm down? I worked so hard on this dinner, and everyone is treating it like garbage. Your mother probably loves this. She's probably thrilled that I failed so she can maintain her position as the family matriarch. I stood up slowly, my 70 years giving me a dignity that Sienna's youth couldn't match. Sienna, I said, my voice clear and steady. This dinner failed because you approached it as a performance rather than an act of love. Thanksgiving isn't about impressing people with fancy techniques or expensive ingredients. It's about bringing family together, nourishing them, making them feel welcomed and cared for. You can't fake that. You can't Instagram your way through it. It requires genuine care for other people, something you've shown precious little of this evening. Sienna's face turned red. How dare you? I dare because you've been trying to push me out of my own family, I continued, my voice still calm. You've been attempting to replace me, to establish yourself as some kind of new authority figure. But here's what you don't understand, you can't replace a mother. You can't replace decades of love and history and real relationships. You can only build your own relationships, in your own way, but that requires authenticity, not manipulation. Manipulation? Sienna laughed harshly. That's rich, coming from you. You've been manipulating this situation from the beginning. No, I said firmly. I stepped back. I let you try to do what you claimed you could do. And you failed, not because I sabotaged you, but because you lacked the fundamental qualities needed to truly be part of a family. You see relationships as transactions. You see people as resources. And you see my son as a ticket to the lifestyle you want. That's not true. Sienna turned to Jonathan desperately. Jonathan, tell her that's not true. Tell her how much I love you. But Jonathan was staring at Sienna with an expression I'd never seen on his face before, a mixture of hurt, confusion, and dawning realization. Is it true? He asked quietly. The things Mom is saying, are they true? Of course not. She's just a jealous old woman who can't accept that her son has moved on. Don't call my mother old, Jonathan said, his voice hardening. And don't act like she's being unreasonable. Sienna, you've been terrible tonight. You insulted my family, you served an awful meal, and now you're having a tantrum like a child. I'm having a tantrum? Your family has been judging me all night. No, Violet interjected, standing up to join me. We've been watching you reveal exactly who you are. Mom didn't have to say anything against you, Sienna. You did all the work yourself. Sienna looked around the table, seeing nothing but cold faces where she'd hoped for admiration. Her carefully constructed facade was crumbling, and she knew it. Fine, she said, her voice shaking with rage and something that might have been fear. Fine. You want to know the truth? Yes, I targeted Jonathan. Yes, I researched him before our first date. Yes, I saw him as a good prospect, successful, recently divorced, emotionally vulnerable, with assets that could provide the lifestyle I want. That's what dating is in the modern world, strategic matching. The room was deathly silent. Jonathan looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. And yes, Sienna continued, seemingly unable to stop herself now that she'd started, I wanted to replace your precious mother as the family matriarch. Because she represents everything outdated and unsophisticated, and I knew that if I could push her out, I could reshape this family into something actually impressive, something worthy of respect. Get out, Jonathan said quietly. What? Get out of my home. We're done. This relationship is over. Sienna's face went white. Jonathan, I didn't mean, yes, you did. You meant every word. And my mother was right about you from the beginning. I was just too blind to see it. He turned to face me, and I saw tears in his eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for how I treated you, for what I said, for letting her try to push you out. I crossed to my son and pulled him into a hug. It's okay, sweetheart. I understand. It's not okay, he said, his voice muffled against my shoulder. I told you that you were too old to cook Thanksgiving. I dismissed your traditions. I let her disrespect you. And now you know better, I said gently. That's what matters. Sienna grabbed her purse and coat, her movements jerky with rage and humiliation. You're all pathetic, she spat. Jonathan, you're never going to find anyone better than me. You're going to regret this. I doubt that, he said coldly. Please leave. After Sienna stormed out, slamming the door behind her, we all stood in awkward silence for a moment. Well, Constance said finally. That was certainly memorable. Despite everything, we all started laughing, real, genuine laughter that released the tension of the evening. I'm starving, Marcus's son announced. Can we please order pizza now? Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, I have a better idea. 20 minutes later, we were all piling into cars and heading to my house on Maple Ridge Avenue. While everyone had been suffering through Sienna's disastrous dinner, I'd had a secret weapon in play, my neighbor Helen, who I'd asked to prepare my traditional Thanksgiving meal in my kitchen, timed to be ready by 8 o'clock. When we arrived at my house, the familiar smells of sage, turkey, and fresh-baked rolls greeted us at the door. The dining room table was set with my good china. The food was laid out on the sideboard, steaming and perfect, my traditional sage and onion stuffing, Theodore's sweet potato casserole, green bean almondine, cranberry relish, and a perfectly golden turkey with crispy skin. Mom, Jonathan said, staring at the spread. When did you? I had a feeling we might need a backup plan, I said simply. Now, everyone sit down. Let's have the Thanksgiving we should have had all along. As we took our places around my familiar table, passing dishes and filling plates with real food, the warmth and joy that had been missing all evening finally emerged. The kids were laughing. The adults were relaxed. This was what Thanksgiving was supposed to be, not perfect, not sophisticated, just family gathered together sharing a meal and each other's company. Jonathan sat beside me, and at one point during the meal, he leaned over and whispered, "Thank you, Mom. For not giving up on me. For seeing through her when I couldn't." That's what mothers do, I said, squeezing his hand. We protect our children, even when they're adults who should know better. He laughed, but there were tears in his eyes. I was such an idiot. You were lonely and vulnerable, and she exploited that. But now you know what to look for. You'll be wiser next time. If there is a next time. I think I need to be single for a while and figure out why I keep making bad choices. That sounds very mature, I approved. And in the meantime, you're always welcome at my table, for Thanksgiving and any other day. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home with full stomachs and happy hearts, Violet stayed behind to help me clean up. You know, she said as we washed dishes together, you could have exposed Sienna earlier. You had all that evidence from Charlene, from the ex-fiancés. Why did you wait? I thought about it as I dried a plate. Because if I had presented that evidence, Jonathan would have thought I was just a jealous mother trying to interfere. He needed to see for himself who she really was. The best lessons are the ones we learn through our own experience. You're scary smart, Mom. I'm 70 years old, honey. I've learned a few things about human nature along the way. As I was getting ready for bed that night, my phone buzzed with a message from Jonathan. Mom, I know this is late notice, but would you be willing to host Thanksgiving next year? I miss your cooking. I miss our traditions. I miss feeling like part of a real family. I love you. I smiled and typed back, would be honored. And I love you too, sweetheart. Happy Thanksgiving. I set my phone down and looked around my bedroom, at the framed photos of my family, at Theodore's reading glasses still on his nightstand even though he'd been gone for 3 years, at the familiar furniture and decorations that made this house a home. Tomorrow, I'd host that family brunch I'd planned. But instead of confronting Sienna, who was no longer relevant, we'd talk about the future, about maintaining our traditions while being open to healthy change, about the importance of respecting our elders while making space for new generations, about what it really means to be a family. For 47 years, I'd been the keeper of our family's Thanksgiving tradition. For a few weeks, I'd thought that role was being taken from me, that I was being pushed aside as too old, too outdated, too irrelevant. But I'd learned something important. You can't lose a role that's built on genuine love and years of authentic relationship. You can only lose it if you give it up. And I had never intended to give it up, I just needed my son to remember why it mattered. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about next year's Thanksgiving. Jonathan would be there, hopefully wiser and healed from this experience. Violet and her family would be there. Constance and all the cousins would be there. We'd eat my traditional dishes, share old stories, and create new memories. And I would stand in my kitchen, my dated, unsophisticated, perfectly wonderful kitchen, and cook with love for the people I cherished most in the world. Because that's what Thanksgiving is really about. Not foam or panna cotta or culinary sophistication. Just love, family, and a 70-year-old woman who knows that some traditions are worth fighting for. 1 year later, the following Thanksgiving arrived with the first snow of the season dusting the streets of Willowbrook. I was up at 5 in the morning, as always, preparing the turkey and starting the side dishes that would feed our family of 18, soon to be 19, as Violet had just announced she was pregnant with her 4th child. Jonathan arrived early to help, something he'd never done before. Over the past year, we'd rebuilt our relationship into something even stronger than it had been. He'd gone to therapy to work through his issues with his divorce and his poor judgment with Sienna. He'd become more present in the family, more appreciative of the things he'd once taken for granted. "How can I help?" he asked, rolling up his sleeves. "You can peel potatoes," I said, handing him the peeler. "Just like I taught you when you were 10. As we worked side by side in my kitchen, he told me about his life, his work, his renewed friendships, his growing understanding of what he really wanted in a partner. "I heard Sienna left Portland," he mentioned casually. "Moved to Los Angeles. Apparently, she's engaged again, to some entertainment lawyer." "I hope she finds what she's looking for," I said, and I meant it. I hope she learns that real happiness doesn't come from status or money, but from genuine connections. "Do you think she'll ever learn that?" "I don't know. That's up to her. But I know that you've learned it, and that's what matters to me." At 5 o'clock, when all our family was gathered around my table, familiar faces, familiar traditions, familiar love, I looked around and felt a deep sense of gratitude. "Before we eat," I said, "I'd like to say something. Last year, I almost lost this, our tradition, our togetherness, our family bond. It reminded me that we should never take these moments for granted. So this year, I'm especially thankful. For this table, for this food, for this family, and for the lesson that some things are worth fighting for." Here, Constance said, raising her glass. "To Grandma B," Violet's oldest added. "For being the best cook and the smartest person we know." "To Mom," Jonathan said quietly, meeting my eyes across the table. "For never giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve it." As we began passing the dishes, my traditional stuffing, Theodore's sweet potato casserole, the green bean almondine, the perfectly roasted turkey, I felt Theodore's presence in the room, as I did every Thanksgiving. I imagined him smiling, proud of how I'd protected our family and our traditions. And as I watched my family eating and laughing and being together, I knew that this warmth, this love, this connection, was what Thanksgiving had always been about. Not sophistication or modernity or culinary innovation. Just an old woman in her dated kitchen, cooking with love for the people who mattered most. And at 71 years old, I was just getting started. 2 days after that disastrous Thanksgiving, I was sitting in my kitchen enjoying my morning coffee when my doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see a sleek black sedan parked in my driveway, not a car I recognized. When I opened the door, I found myself face to face with an elegant woman in her early 60s, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit. "Mrs. Calloway," she said with a warm smile. "My name is Patricia Rothstein. I'm David Rothstein's mother. May I come in?" David Rothstein, Sienna's second ex-fiancé. My heart rate picked up as I invited her inside. "I hope I'm not intruding," Patricia said as she settled into my living room. "David told me about your conversation with him regarding Sienna Blackwood. When I heard what happened at your Thanksgiving dinner, I felt compelled to reach out." "How did you hear about that?" I asked, surprised. Patricia smiled ruefully. "Sienna posted quite a dramatic series of Instagram stories that night, blaming your family for sabotaging her dinner. She deleted them the next morning, but not before several people screenshot them and shared them around. The Portland social scene is smaller than you'd think. I felt a flash of anger. Even in defeat, Sienna had tried to paint herself as the victim. "Mrs. Calloway, may I call you Beatrice?" Patricia continued. "I wanted to thank you personally for protecting your son from that woman. I wish I'd been able to do more for David when he was involved with her." The experience left him quite hurt and cynical about relationships. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "But why come all the way here to tell me this?" Patricia reached into her elegant leather briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Because I have information you need to see." After David's engagement to Sienna ended, I hired a private investigator to document her activities. I wanted to make sure she couldn't do to anyone else what she tried to do to my son. What I discovered was far worse than I'd imagined. She opened the folder and spread several documents across my coffee table. Bank statements, credit reports, court records, and photographs. "Sienna Blackwood isn't even her real name," Patricia said quietly. "She was born Sandra Jean Wilkins in a small town called Dusty Creek, Oregon. She's 38, not 34 as she claims. She has over $80,000 in credit card debt, 2 bankruptcies, and a history of writing bad checks." I stared at the documents in shock. "Jonathan has no idea about any of this." "I'm sure he doesn't. Sienna, or Sandra, is very good at creating false identities. She's done it before." The investigator found evidence of at least 3 other aliases she's used over the past decade, each time targeting wealthy men in different cities. Patricia pulled out more papers. "But here's what concerns me most. 2 weeks ago, Sienna opened a credit card in Jonathan's name using information she must have stolen from him. She's already charged $15,000 to it." My blood ran cold. "That's identity theft. That's a crime." "Yes, it is. And there's more. She's been researching your assets as well, Beatrice." The investigator found searches on her computer for information about your home value, your late husband's life insurance payout, and Oregon inheritance laws. I felt sick. Sienna hadn't just been targeting Jonathan, she'd been planning to exploit our entire family. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. "Because you need to file a police report," Patricia said firmly. David chose not to press charges when he discovered Sienna's true nature. He just wanted her out of his life. But she's escalated. The identity theft, the fraud, this is serious. If you don't stop her now, she'll move on to her next victim and do it all over again. I looked at the evidence spread before me, then at Patricia's determined expression. She was right. This wasn't just about protecting Jonathan anymore. It was about preventing Sienna from destroying other families. "I'll need to talk to Jonathan about this," I said. "He'll need to be the one to file charges about the credit card fraud." "Of course. And Mrs. Calloway? You did the right thing, trusting your instincts about her. Too many people dismiss their gut feelings because they don't want to seem judgmental. But sometimes, our instincts are trying to protect us." After Patricia left, I immediately called Jonathan and asked him to come over. When he arrived and I showed him the documents, I watched the color drain from his face. "She opened a credit card in my name," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "How did she even get my social security number?" "You probably gave her access to documents at some point," I said gently. "When you're in a relationship, you trust the person. She exploited that trust." Jonathan sat heavily on my couch, looking devastated. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Not just for what I said to you about Thanksgiving, but for bringing someone like this into our family. What if she'd succeeded? What if she'd married me and gotten access to everything?" "But she didn't," I reminded him. "Because we stopped her. And now we're going to make sure she can't do this to anyone else." Over the next week, Jonathan filed a police report about the identity theft. With Patricia's investigators' evidence and Charlene Wu's documentation of Sienna's past fraudulent activities, the case against her was strong. The police obtained a warrant for her arrest. Sienna was picked up at a luxury hotel in downtown Portland, where she'd apparently been staying since the Thanksgiving disaster. According to the detective who called to update us, she'd been there with another man, a wealthy real estate developer she'd met online just days after her breakup with Jonathan. The detective told us that when confronted with the evidence, Sienna had initially tried to claim she was the victim of mistaken identity. But fingerprints and handwriting analysis connected her to multiple fraudulent documents going back years. She's a serial con artist, the detective explained. She's facing multiple felony charges across 3 counties. This isn't going away with a slap on the wrist. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt sad. Somewhere along the way, a young woman named Sandra Jean Wilkins had decided that lying, manipulating, and stealing were acceptable ways to get what she wanted. And now her life was unraveling completely. Do you think she'll go to prison? Jonathan asked me one evening as we sat in my kitchen. Probably, I said. The evidence is overwhelming. Part of me feels guilty, he admitted. Like I should feel worse for her. But mostly, I just feel relieved that she's out of our lives. That's normal, I assured him. You can feel sympathy for someone while still recognizing that they made their own choices and need to face consequences. The family brunch I'd planned happened the weekend after Sienna's arrest. Everyone gathered at my house, and the atmosphere was completely different from what I'd originally anticipated. Instead of a tense confrontation, it became a celebration, not of Sienna's downfall, but of our family's resilience. I want to propose a toast, Violet said, raising her glass of apple cider. To Mom, who taught us that protecting family isn't about being mean or controlling, it's about having the wisdom to see the truth and the courage to act on it. To Grandma B, the grandchildren chorused. Jonathan stood up, his expression serious. I also want to say something. Mom, you could have told me I told you so 100 times over the past few weeks. You could have made me feel terrible about my judgment and my mistakes. But you haven't. You've just been there for me, supporting me, helping me figure out how to move forward. That's what real love looks like, and I'm grateful. I felt tears prick my eyes. Sweetheart, you're my son. I'll always be here for you, no matter what. I know that now, he said. And I'll never take it for granted again. Constance raised her glass. And let's not forget the most important lesson here, never underestimate a 70-year-old woman with a plan. Everyone laughed, and the mood lightened. We spent the rest of the afternoon sharing stories, eating leftover Thanksgiving food that I'd insisted everyone take home in containers, and simply enjoying being together. As the sun began to set and family members started heading home, Jonathan lingered behind to help me clean up. Mom, he said as we washed dishes together, can I ask you something? Of course. When did you first suspect something was wrong with Sienna? Was it right away, or did it take time? I thought about it carefully. I think I sensed something off from the first time I met her, but I dismissed it. I told myself I was just being an overprotective mother, that I needed to give her a chance. It wasn't until she started actively trying to push me out of the family that I realized my instincts were right. I should have listened to you sooner. Jonathan, you're 43 years old. You needed to learn this lesson on your own. If I'd just told you she was bad news, would you have believed me? He smiled ruefully. Probably not. Exactly. Sometimes the best thing a parent can do is step back and let their adult children make mistakes, while being ready to help pick up the pieces afterward. You're pretty wise for someone who's supposedly too old to cook Thanksgiving dinner, he teased. I swatted him with a dish towel, and we both laughed. 3 months later, I received a call from Patricia Rothstein. Sienna had been sentenced to 4 years in prison for identity theft, fraud, and multiple counts of financial crimes. She'd also been ordered to pay restitution to her victims, including Jonathan. I thought you'd want to know, Patricia said. And I wanted to tell you something else. After this all came out, 2 other men came forward with stories about being targeted by Sienna. Because you and Jonathan pressed charges, they found the courage to do the same. You may have saved them years of financial recovery. After we hung up, I sat quietly in my kitchen, thinking about everything that had happened. A simple Thanksgiving dinner had turned into something so much bigger, a lesson about trust, family, wisdom, and the importance of protecting the people we love. My phone buzzed with a text from Jonathan. "Hey Mom, I'm bringing someone to Sunday dinner tomorrow. Just a friend from work. No pressure, no expectations. But I'd like you to meet her. Her name is Rachel, and she's a nurse. She loves to cook. I told her about your stuffing recipe and she asked if you might be willing to share it. Is that okay?" I smiled and typed back, "Of course. I'd love to meet her. And yes, I'll share the recipe, but only if she promises to use it with love." His response came quickly. "She said that's the only way she knows how to cook. I think you're going to really like her, Mom." As I set my phone down, I looked around my kitchen, my wonderful, dated, perfectly imperfect kitchen. The worn spot on the floor near the stove. The old recipe cards in their battered box. The apron hanging on its hook. This kitchen had witnessed 47 years of Thanksgivings. It had seen me teach my children to cook. It had been the setting for countless family dinners and celebrations. And it had been the foundation from which I'd protected my family from someone who wanted to destroy what we'd built. I was 70 years old, and apparently, I was just hitting my stride. Next Thanksgiving would be here before I knew it. I'd be in this kitchen again, preparing turkey and stuffing and all the traditional dishes that made our family gathering special. Jonathan would be there, probably with Rachel if things went well. Violet would be there with her growing family. And we'd all gather around my dining room table, sharing food and love and the knowledge that we'd survived a storm and come out stronger. Because that's what family does. We protect each other. We support each other. And we never, ever underestimate the power of a mother's love and a perfectly roasted turkey. Some traditions are worth fighting for. And I'd fight for mine until the day I died. Thank you so much for staying with me through this entire journey. What started as a simple insult, being told I was too old to cook, turned into a battle for my family's soul. And we won. I hope my story inspires you to trust your instincts, protect your loved ones, and never let anyone make you feel like your age diminishes your worth. We have wisdom, experience, and strength that only comes from living a full life. Please comment below, have you ever had to protect your family from someone toxic? How did you handle it? And most importantly, what's your favorite Thanksgiving tradition? I'd love to hear from you. Remember, age is just a number, but wisdom is forever. And a mother's love? That's the most powerful force in the universe. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. May your tables always be full, your families always be protected, and your turkey always be perfectly cooked. With love and gratitude, Beatrice Calloway, Turkey Red Heart.